Good evening, and thank you for joining the April 16th City Council regular hybrid meeting. City Council will continue in executive session for an additional 15 minutes until approximately 5:45 p.m. Thank you for your patience.
Check, check, check. You're just far enough away that you're blurry.
Actually, you and I are both having eyesight issues, so we can't see what each other's doing.
I can't tell if you're happy or mad, so if you're grimacing, I won't know.
You can't tell when Jesse's mad?
Not when I'm. Let's do it. Dave's not here, but. Good evening and welcome to the April 16, 2024 City Council regular hybrid meeting. I'm Mayor Salim Neese. This evening's hybrid City Council meeting is being brought to you in person and by Zoom. We're also broadcasting live on MITV Channel 21 and on the city's YouTube channel. Before this meeting, the City Council was in executive session from 5 p.m. to 5:45 p.m. During executive session, City Council discussed with legal counsel planning or adopting a strategy or position to be taken by governing body during the course of any collective bargaining, professional negotiations, or grievance or mediation proceedings, or reviewing the proposals made in negotiations or proceedings while in progress pursuant to RCW 42.30140.4b. Welcome to all, and thanks for joining us tonight. City Council members, please have your microphones turned on for roll call. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Andral.
Here.
Councilmember Jacobson.
Here.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Here.
Councilmember Weicker.
Here.
Councilmember Weinberg.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Here.
And Mayor Neese.
Here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
City Clerk, please note that Councilmember Andral has joined us via Zoom. Next, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. Council, if you've joined us in council chambers, please stand and face the flag. If you've joined via Zoom, please mute and turn off your video to ensure the U.S. flag is visible. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We now move to approval of tonight's agenda. If there's no questions, may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Jacobson, seconded by Councilmember Reynolds. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Andral.
Aye.
Mayor Neese.
Aye.
Councilmember Weinberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Aye.
Councilmember Jacobson.
Aye.
Councilmember Weicker.
Aye.
And Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, motion passes. The agenda is approved. Next up on the agenda, we have a study session on AB 6445, Wildland Fire Preparedness Study Session, and we welcome Emergency Manager Amanda Kieverkamp. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Neese, and good evening, City Council. Give me a moment while I share my screen here. All right, there we go. All right, my name is Amanda Kieverkamp, and I am your emergency manager. I am joined tonight by several members of the Eastside Fire and Rescue Team, Emergency Manager Greg Bodden, Deputy Chief Will Aho, and Fire Marshal Jeremy Hicks. We're here tonight to share information about wildfire preparedness in Mercer Island. And in just a moment, I'll turn it over to my Eastside Fire and Rescue colleagues who will share information about Eastside's wildfire response capabilities, the wildfire risk on Mercer Island, risk reduction strategies, and then I'll share about communicating during emergency and emergency preparedness and programs that the city offers. And then we'll open it up to questions. So I know our time is limited. I will turn it now over to Greg Bodden. Greg.
Hello, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this important topic. There we go. We have three topics we're going to talk about. Chief Aho will talk about wildfire response, and I'll talk about wildfire risk and risk reduction. Fire Marshal Jeremy Hicks is available should you have questions about fire code. And Chief Aho, can you start?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak before you. Sorry, my video is not working. There we go. So one of the great things about the Eastside Mercer Island Partnership does relate to the response capabilities, what we're able to bring. Eastside has been very proactive over several years of getting folks trained, educated, equipped for that potentiality of any kind of wildfire danger that could occur here in King County. Part of that is also how we respond to each of the calls. So we talked a little bit about equipping. So it's identifying the right resources, meaning having apparatus that are positioned in the most appropriate locations across the jurisdiction, having the right equipment, hose and hand tools. So all of our firefighters, as they go out there and learn how and mitigate these type of incidents, have the appropriate equipment, because many times on these, as you see in these pictures, we're out walking through the forested land. So carrying around big, heavy hoses is just not appropriate for that. The other thing is on the response side is continuing to work with all of our partners around us to best deploy the resources so you get the closest, most appropriate resource that can mitigate the incident as quick as possible so things don't elevate to a larger scale. Next slide, please. So part of this is by establishing a multi-tiered response. So I know that we've shared a little bit of how our dispatch criteria is and our responses are structured. It is built in a tiered system. So meaning that a small scale incident, it's going to get the minimal amount of equipment out there. So large scale fire engine, a couple of them, and a battalion chief will be there for anything that is small. So think something that is about 50 by 50 in size. Those folks will have specialized wildland equipment that are on there, again, that hose and hand tools that we talked a little bit about, to be able to go and mitigate that very quickly. Now, should that size of the incident exceed what those two initial engine companies are able to handle, the responses are structured so they can increase in scope. And now we start getting into more specialized units like the picture that you have before you. So that is an example of what an Eastside brush truck looks like, meaning it's four-wheel drive, it's small in size, so it can go off-road very easily, where our large-scale fire engines just don't have the ability because they're too tall, too wide, too heavy. And these also carry more equipment that is specialized for getting out there and dealing with wildfire incidents. So we have 4 in Eastside's fleet. The nice thing that Mercer Island has done is by recognizing that there's some challenging areas that Mercer Island has to access, a lot of the waterfronts, you guys were already leaning forward and built 2 smaller fire engines that allows us to access those areas very effectively. That's the same thing as what we have out in North Bend. So it's a smaller size engine that has equipment. There's also been recognition up here in the Northeast County of we need to be better prepared to support each other, meaning that Bellevue has now added a brush truck to their fleet. Renton added a second one a year ago. Shoreline's added one. So there's other jurisdictions up here that are getting into this work because they recognize that urban interface, we have to be prepared. Next slide, please. So staffing. All of our firefighters, they start from the end of academy. They go through a red card training program to get them that baseline understanding of what it takes to go and approach these. Because again, these are different than looking at a house that's on fire or a car that's on fire. The idea is to get surround it as quickly as possible. What we call cut trail, so remove any burning material as quickly as possible, so the fire then cannot continue to progress. And we have to be very efficient with our water because we're working in many areas that do not have sustainable water systems. Part of our team, we also have 50 people that go above and beyond. So our basic level training allows folks to get out there and handle our day-to-day activities when it comes to wildland. These additional 50 plus folks, and our team continues to expand, they go and get DNR certified red card. And really the difference between the two is there's an arduous pack test that these 50 folks that take to make sure that they meet the Washington State DNR requirements. Then that also allows them to be deployed through any kind of Washington State mobilization or sometimes even out-of-state mobilizations. So we have the ability to go and learn from other people's fires and bring that back to our own local jurisdiction. Next slide, please. We talked a little bit about water supply, right? So because we tend to work in areas that do not have a lot of hydrant systems or access to big water supplies may be a little bit more challenging. Eastside has in its fleet 3 tenders. Sometimes we get to utilize them for non-structure fire, or excuse me, for structure fires, or if we got water system issues. So these allow us to bring water to where the incident is. We have a couple of them that are 1,500 gallons. Our largest one's 3,000 gallons. There's also other agencies around us like Fall City and Duval that also deal with limited water supply issues and have that experience that we're able to tap into as well. Next slide, please. One of the great things about how Mercer Island is structured is you have a lot of fire hydrants. Our fire hydrant separation is anywhere from 400 to about 500 feet apart. And while that may seem like a lot, each of our fire engines, our big engines, they carry a little over 1,000 feet of hose. So we have plenty of hose to be able to make those connections and have adequate water supply. Our tenders also have the ability, so worst case scenarios, say a hydrant system goes down, we have the ability to draft directly out of Lake Washington to provide a continuous water supply to wherever we need it to go. There's also other aspects or resources that we have the ability to tap into. There are some aerial aircraft that we are able to utilize. King County literally last year just bought its first water bucket. It's about 300, 400 gallons. And they're based out of the Renton Field, so they're super close. But if we start to getting into more of the large scale aircraft or larger helicopters, those are Department of Natural Resources assets, and that requires going through a little bit lengthier process, meaning the incident commanders have the ability to evaluate what the needs of the incident are. If they deem that they need some of these aerial resources, because for whatever reason we're unable to resolve it with our ground forces, they can call those in. But if it has not escalated to the size and scope where a state mobilization is activated, the local jurisdiction then carries the burden of the cost of that aircraft. So about 4 years ago, down outside of Auburn, they called for a DNR helicopter because they had a little wildfire that they were trying to get a hold of. That was $10,000 an hour. So it is a significant amount of money to get these resources. It worked well down there. As you can see here with Mercer Island, we are very well protected, and I don't see that would be something that we would necessarily need to dig into to protect this community. But our battalion chiefs, because they've been actively involved with wildland deployments and the training, they recognize what those steps are and what those needs are. So next slide, please. And then we talked a little bit about state mobilization. So the brush rig that you see there, it's similar to what the small scale fire engines that are on Mercer Island. That one's a little unique because it's got four-wheel drive on there, but essentially it functions exactly the same as what yours do. We actively participate in state mobilizations and sending folks outside of the state to support other communities, which is such a huge benefit because we get to learn from how other fires are managed and bring that back so we can be better prepared. And we continue to share that information and work collaborative with each of our partners to make sure that we're all on the same page. In fact, we've got 2 big training events coming up next month, and it's all about working with our partners. We got DNR that's coming out, and several of the cities that have wildland programs are going to be participating in that as well. So that's a quick overview on our response capabilities. So I'll turn it over to Greg.
Thanks, Chief. Yes, the next slide, there's a lot of information here. The yellow areas are what we call intermix areas, where structures and wildland vegetation are intermixed. It's hard to see, but there's also some small red dots. Those are where some sort of brush fire has occurred, and those can be pretty small. And you'll see about a quarter of those are on the I-90 corridor, because so often those co-locate with human activity. Next slide. So this slide shows what we call a cumulative wildfire risk. It's based on a national data set. It's looking at the probability of ignition should a wildfire be in close proximity. And this is looking out over 30 years. So a little bit like compounding interest. This takes into account geography, vegetation, climate, and fire behavior. So the light yellow color that you see is the less than 0.1%. And so you see you do have some small areas of that on Mercer Island. Next slide. So wildfire on the west side of the Cascades has traditionally been very small, 80 acres versus thousands, slow moving, typically away from people. In remote areas, usually the DNR will allow them to smolder until there's a risk to people. Obviously, we've seen some outliers in that behavior. Sumner, it's called Sumner Grade in 2020 and Bolt Creek in 2022. And I'll talk a little bit more of those in a minute. Next slide. So here's a map of the Bolt Creek fire. This was in what we call a Cascade Gap area. So this is like Highway 2, I-90, they call it the Enumclaw Gap, where hot air and fast winds can move over the Cascades and accelerate fire behavior. Bolt Creek, we had extremely steep terrain, we had difficult to access terrain. And so all those things combined to make for a fast moving fire. Next slide. So Mercer Island has a lower wildfire risk than some of the recent high profile fires that we've been hearing about. Bolt Creek and Sumner Grade, those are both Cascade Gaps. They were affected by funneled east winds. And unlike Mercer Island, they were in away from the moderating influence of Puget Sound and Lake Washington. So you can have temperature extremes in the foothills that you don't have closer to water. And I know Lahaina got a lot of people's attention. A big difference there, Lahaina, you had quite literally hurricane force winds, downslope, accelerated because of the terrain. You had invasive vegetation that had dried out on the inactive or abandoned plantations. You had vegetation in close proximity to houses. There was a fire code to prohibited that, but there was no enforcement. You had homes close together with an older building code. So a number of things set Lahaina apart from our west fires. Next slide, please. So how do you fix this? How do you address wildfire risk? It's hard to point to any one particular thing. It's really a process, and it really should be a community process. In your favor, you have healthy forests. We have distinctly different vegetation and climate from Eastern Washington. The city of Mercer Island has adopted modern current building codes. You have hydrants, good access, you have all those things working for you. But on a regional, as a community, you look at how you measure your risk tolerance, your building code, your wildland intermix, and then you work as a community to decide where you want to focus your efforts. Resources you have available to you, King County Conservation District and King County Office of Emergency Management are doing work in this area. Eastside works very closely with King County Conservation District. Also, regarding risk, someone had asked if Puget Sound Energy has a program for shutting off the power during high wind events. They definitely do. However, their modeling shows the highest risk to be in those Cascade Gap areas, and much less so closer to Puget Sound. Next slide. There's a lot going on in this slide. Amanda, can you click it 2 more times? Yeah, okay. Oh, well, I'm sorry, go back one, I miscounted. What we are looking at in terms of risk is obviously the natural environment, weather, temperatures, wind, humidity, vegetation, our built environment, what we've created, building access, building materials, available water, and then our interaction with that environment. Do we allow open fires, fireworks, barbecues, other ignition sources? So those are some of the factors. Next slide. Home hardening is obviously an important part of this. On the west side of the mountains, we look a lot at debris on roof and decks, needles, leaves, similar, vegetation right up against your home, screening on the venting, the bird block venting you have under the eaves, ridge vents. There's a move to go to finer mesh to keep embers out. We look at ladder fuels. Healthy trees, healthy conifer trees on the west side seem to be more of a deterrent to widely spreading fire. So quite a bit different from what we see in California or Eastern Washington. Next slide. So the house on the right, this is the Lahaina Miracle House. According to the owners, the house is wood. It's 100 years old. What they had going for them is they had just replaced an asphalt shingle roof with a modern heavy gauge metal roof. They had trimmed back the foliage around the house, and under the eaves, right up against the foundation, they put down crushed rock. The vegetation in the crushed rock were actually not for fire protection, it was to keep termites out. But those three factors are considered to have made the biggest difference in protecting their home from fire. So I just threw a whole bunch of information at you. I know you'd seen some of this in your council packet. Amanda, I'll hand it to you.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate that thorough presentation. And council, I'll open it up to questions. Does anybody have any questions for the East Side Fire Team? You may have stumped the group there. Well, look, you know, we in Mercer Island, as we have gotten to know EFR and now gotten to engage EFR, we really appreciate the thorough and hard work that has gone into a lot of these types of materials. I know that the Pioneer Park fire plan was prepared by you folks, and it's great to have you back to talk about urban forest fire fighting and what that would look like in the event something happened. We feel quite well protected, so thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
All right, next up on our agenda, we have the City Manager's Report, and we welcome City Manager Jesse Bond.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Casey is helping me with the screen share. Let's go ahead to the next slide, please. First up on our agenda tonight is just a look ahead at the upcoming meeting calendar. City Council, I'll remind you that your next council meeting is Tuesday, May 7th. We have a very busy week with board and commission meetings. Both the Arts Council and the Planning Commission are meeting this week. And then the Parks and Recreation Commission and the Open Space Conservancy Trust will be meeting Thursday in another joint meeting and continuing their work on the draft open space zone. They may also hold one more follow-up meeting on May 2nd. That will be determined based on the outcomes of Thursday's meeting. Also a reminder, we are underway with board and commission recruitment. Our city clerk is going to send you an email tomorrow, council, with the specifics on the design commission seats we need to fill. We realized today that we may have overlooked that specific communication. There are specialist seats that we need to fill, so we'll make sure we get that to you. So far, I think we have enough applicants for all of the seats, but we certainly would like to have more, and we'll keep our recruitment open through April 26th. We'll be in front of you in May to make those appointments. Next slide, please. All right, some city updates. Let's start with the big update. Council, you are aware on April 3rd, we activated our Emergency Operations Center after we had learned about a leak in the Seattle Public Utilities main water transmission line. That's the line that comes onto the island and provides water to our reservoir. We had a geotechnical engineer out on site once the leak was isolated to the SPU water main, who advised that if soil conditions worsened or if the pipe were to actually break, we had about 20 homes that were at risk. So we proceeded with evacuation of homes that night. Again, I want to extend my thanks for the grace and kindness that were extended to our staff by those homeowners. I met with many of them here on that night. We were able to get them back into their homes the following day, but we had to do some work for that to happen. Seattle Public Utilities had to shut down that main transition line. That took us, I think, 6 to 8 hours to get that big line shut down. And then we also had to shut down an adjacent water main, a city water main that was also in the area. We had to isolate a section of that pipe and shut it down. So once both of those water mains were powered down, if you will, we were able to get homeowners back into their homes. The repair work is not done yet. In fact, next slide, please. That's what's the work that's happening now. I guess before I get to that, I should mention the Shorewood community receives their water directly from Seattle Public Utilities. So with the main transition line down at this time, Shorewood is tied into the city water system, and we are getting our water through a backup line. That backup line it's a little bit smaller than the main transition line, so we are evaluating our water needs as we move into a higher demand season, and obviously eager to get the SPU main transition line back into service. So what's happening now, more information to come, I think, is the punchline for tonight. Seattle Public Utilities and their engineering teams and all their technicians are evaluating the repair options. We've been meeting with them pretty much daily since this event happened and evaluating the options. We also are assessing some work that we may need to do in the area to our own water main. So that's all happening now. We'll be meeting with the neighborhood ahead of any work being started out there, and council will have more information for you at a future meeting. Again, I want to thank everyone for their help, not only the residents, but the team of staff that responded quickly on that night. Switching subjects, in some positive news, the police modular buildings, these are the buildings that will temporarily house our police department due to the city hall closure, are energized, and they are now connected to the city's data infrastructure. The next step is completing the plumbing, which was being worked on today, and I understand will be tomorrow and hopefully wrapped up this week. All of our security systems will be in play, and then we'll be ready to move in. So you see in that picture, the police department has assembled the lockers and the shelving, and council, as soon as these buildings are fully operationalized, we'd be happy to have you in for a tour. They actually look pretty amazing on the inside. I've been very impressed. So we're very close. We're close to move in. We will be taking delivery of one more modular building. That's probably late spring or very early part of summer. Next slide, please. Speaking of projects, I wanted to give an update on the Luther Burbank Boiler Building. In fact, if you go to Luther Burbank Park, the outside of the building has been cleaned. It looks spectacular. So I'll just remind you, we are in phase 1 of a major project at Luther Burbank Park. This is specific to the boiler building itself, where we're doing very important seismic retrofits, including some work on the chimney and renovating those very old restrooms. So the masonry cleaning and restoration started up last week, including the pressure washing. That's what that picture is. And we're addressing the damaged mortar and the brick joints, so doing some really important preservation work on the building. Shotcrete installation in the chimney is expected to begin next week. This is a key component of stabilizing that chimney. And then I'll remind you, once we wrap up work on the boiler building next year, we'll turn our attention to the remaining project, which is the waterfront and the docks. So very exciting. Next slide. This is a heads up. As you know, council, later this year, I think it will be around end of August, early September, work will begin on the sewer line upgrade that happens to run right through the middle of Mercer Park. We've had this on the list for quite some time. In fact, our summer concert schedule at Mercer was adjusted just a bit to make room for us to get this work done during the fall. So I wanted to let you know that this week we'll have geotechnical engineers out on site at Mercer Park taking borings. This is work that just has to be done so we can finish our engineering and design on this project. So we wanted to let you know the work isn't starting yet. It's just the geotechnical work, but it will be highly visible So we wanted to make sure you're aware. We will be back. In fact, Jason Kittner is sitting right next to me. We'll probably do a quick presentation to you all before we go to bid on this project, just so you know what's in the scope. All right, next slide, please. Congratulations to our Public Works team. We were recently awarded a $185,000 grant from WashDOT. This is for signalization improvements. You might recall our ADA transition plan identified the need for us to make upgrades at a number of our intersections. So the good news is we've got a grant that will help us do that at 4 locations, and I won't read those on the screen. But what we'll be doing is installing push buttons like what you see there in the picture at those 4 intersections. So we'll be working on that in 2024, and I think some of the work will roll over into 2025 as well. Next slide, please. Also, I've had a few questions about what's happening on the parcel, the transportation parcel on Island Crestway, Southeast 40th. We began, we did a pretty big improvement project out there in last year, the ADA curb ramps and sidewalks. That's all done. What's remaining is really the landscaping. We had our contractor out last week. They put down, they reseeded the grass again and did some work on the irrigation heads and some other landscaping work. So we're just giving that grass a little more time to take hold. As you can see, it looks a little bare still. Once that grass has come in, we will remove that orange construction fencing, and then that parcel will be open to the public. So we're close, probably another 8 weeks or so, if I didn't just jinx it. All right, next slide, please. The SCADA project, this is our supervisory control and data acquisition system that the city uses to monitor both our water and sewer networks. Council, we just recently completed work on the water side of the SCADA system, and now there's more work to be done on the sewer side. So just a heads up that work is beginning to replace the obsolete sewer system. SCADA sewer system. So in 2024 and into 2025, we will be upgrading the equipment and SCADA communication systems at 17 of our sewer pump stations. So this is really important work. I was going to say it's exciting work, but it's really important work to help us monitor our utility systems. Okay, next slide. A couple heads up items. It is, if you have school-age children like I do, it's that time of year where we need to ask ourselves what will our children be doing this summer? Hopefully not home driving us crazy. So we have just launched our summer camp website, and we're really excited that we have 16 partners delivering camps here under the Parks and Recreation umbrella, some on this site and some at some of our park sites. Everything from sports to bikes to arts, you name it. We've got something for just about everyone. So we encourage folks to go look at our website and sign up early. Sign up early, lessons learned. These camps do sell out. Thank you. Next slide. Council, I believe this is on your calendar, but it's a good reminder for everyone. We're hosting a community open house to discuss the comprehensive plan update. That is May 1st, so it's a couple weeks out from 6 to 8 o'clock here at the Mercer Island Community Center. We'll have our staff and consultants here. I understand the Planning Commission will be here, and we're looking to engage the community on feedback regarding our comprehensive plan draft, which we are really close to having that draft all pulled together. Thanks to the staff and the Planning Commission for their work on that. Next slide, please. All right, a couple good news items. Council, we emailed you about this recently, but I wanted to flag it for everyone again and make sure it was in front of the community. In early March, our Healthy Youth Initiative, which is a program within the Youth and Family Services Department, launched a new website, parentingmercerisland.org, which has been a major initiative we've been working on for quite some time. It's also funded by a 5-year federal grant. It's a tool that we've developed with our partner. In fact, you often ask, why are we paying Montana State University? They are our partner and helped develop this website with us. It's about supportive parenting skills and family management, and we just had an email go out to the staff because it's not just something that's for Mercer Island, it's for anyone that might find themselves looking for parenting tips. It's pretty handy. You go in, you enter your child's age, and you're able to pull up some really great resource material. So my hat's off to the YFS team for the launch. We're going to be pushing this out. You'll see a lot of communications on this in the coming weeks and months. So congrats on the website launch. I know it's been 2 long years of work, but it's a great product. And finally, the thrift shop. I don't know, everyone is cleaning out their houses, and it's that time. Thank you. Our donations are up 26% this year. We've seen a massive jump in just 3 months, which is fantastic. That's about 45 more vehicles a day than we were seeing in 2023. And you know the way it works, as product comes in, it's getting processed and it's going right back onto the floor. And this is how our thrift shop is recovering from our full closure during the pandemic. So I know the Youth and Family Services Foundation has been doing a lot of promotional work for us in the thrift shop. So I wanted to say thank you to them and just to the community as a whole. We appreciate you thinking of the thrift shop first when you have goods to donate. We'll have more information on how this is affecting our revenue, but right now that increase in donations is really exciting. And that is all I have for you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item of business is appearances. This is an opportunity for anyone to speak to the City Council on any item except items requiring a public hearing, any quasi-judicial matters, or campaign-related matters. Tonight's agenda will include in-person public appearances and remote public appearances via Zoom. Individuals wishing to address the council may do so in person or by Zoom or telephone, provided they register with the city clerk by 4 p.m. today. When it's your turn to speak, you'll be called by name. Remarks must be addressed to the council as a whole and not to individual council or staff members. Any person making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks or who becomes boisterous, threatening, or personally abusive while addressing the city council may be requested to leave the meeting. Please speak audibly, state your name and city of residence for the record. There'll be a timer on the screen. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. When your time is ended, I'll thank you for your comments and move to the next item or next speaker or item of business. City Clerk, please call the first speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our first speaker tonight is Addie Smith. Second call for Addie Smith. Mr. Mayor, I do not see Addie Smith in the meeting. I'll move to the next speaker.
Very well.
Our next speaker tonight is Chris Gels. Second call for Chris Gels. Mr. Mayor, Chris Gels is also not in attendance. I will move to the next speaker. Our third speaker tonight is Carolyn Boatsman.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Carolyn Boatsman, and I'm a resident of Mercer Island. I would like to comment on the proposed reconstitution of the Planning Commission, of which I'm a member. I'm expressing my own views here tonight. Discussion in council noted that it was difficult for staff to bring lay people up to speed. A follow-on was that the staff was spending too much time with the commission. Work is therefore focused on reforming the commission with a majority of professionals, since they would already know the material, and it was also noted that recommendations would be more precise. Regarding time spent, a review of the record shows that the commission meetings have averaged only 2.7 hours per meeting over our 2-year period, which is not lengthy, and the number of meetings averaged a dozen per year. The time spent doesn't seem to support the proposal. The commissioners are not slow to pick up the material. Meeting length and number of meetings have been reasonable. So what are the more fundamental reasons for the proposal? Comments during council discussions made it clear that the motive continues to be a response to the state legislation and that idea that there would be more to come. The vision of time savings and less work persists. The legislation did create more work, but it came during an already expected bulge in the workload, that of the typical 8-year comp plan update. We will get that work done on time, struggling like every other city that's in the same boat. So what's left to examine? What about the vision of quicker and more precise recommendations? Maybe it would be quicker and more precise, but there are still those 2 non-professionals sitting on the commission, albeit in the minority. so I doubt it would be quicker. I also doubt smooth sailing for a commission made up of a majority of professionals and a minority of residents. In the end, quick and precise are not in the typical lexicon of citizen participation in a democratic government. But for our tolerance of democratic process, citizens can give direct input and be represented. So for 64 years, citizens have cycled in and out of this commission. And sometimes they've come to decisions easily. People have not been much divided. Other times, the commission's quite divided. But it's all to the good in a democracy, and division on a PC is not a negative. Frustration can sometimes inspire a vision of something better, where the frustration could be lessened or removed. But much can be lost in that nicer-looking world. The ordinance will not change anything about state legislative requirements. It will only reduce citizen input in government. Another loss is that Mercer Island would become an extreme outlier in regards to the constitution of its planning commission when compared to all other cities in the region. It's not a good look for Mercer Island. Like the residents of our peer cities, Mercer Islanders are up to the job of advising their government. Thank you for considering my comments.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we have tracked down Chris Gels, and he is in the meeting, and we will move to him next. He is in under Joanne Abelson.
So bear with me just a second. I got a little discombobulated when I couldn't get in. So you can hear me? Oh, start my video. Great. Everybody can hear me?
Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Chris Gels, currently on the Planning Commission, speaking tonight just for myself. I'm a relatively new member who was appointed to a one-year term last year. I reapplied a couple of weeks ago for a full term, but now I've withdrawn my application because the council's action at the last meeting made it apparent to me that my continued service was not only not needed, but really not wanted. I, like many, have serious questions about the tack the council has taken on this matter. I'm not sure what it's about. I've heard that the work of bringing lay members like me up to speed is just too much for the planning department. If that's the case, I'm not sure this solves the problem, since there will still be lay members to educate. The dynamics of the new commission seem fraught, with some lay, some professional, some local, some off-island, some paid, some volunteer, and then there's the cost and the loss of local control and what this says about the nature of our government and public service. Also, I have to wonder whether, under the proposal on the table, the 5 remaining commissioners will stay, given that they're in for 8 tough months of work before being thanked and excused. I'm not sure what all this means for the future of the commission, but I do have a simple common sense proposal. Take step 1 now and delay action on step 2. If you simply don't fill the 2 open positions, the commission can move forward with 5 while working with the planning department and the council to address whatever concerns are animating the council in this matter. You can then revisit step 2, the reconstitution, this fall or winter, in light of what you learn between now and then. This would also give you a chance to obtain meaningful public comment, something that has been sorely lacking. Options at that point would be to go forward with the plan on the table, stick with the 5 lay member commission that we will have seen in action, go back to the original 7-member configuration, or something else we haven't thought of yet. I believe this delay will give the city its best chance of making the right decision for our future. For over 60 years, we've been getting along with the Citizen Planning Commission, and I think we've done okay. This is a challenging time for the city, I get it, but as they say, reconstitute in haste and repent in leisure. I urge you not to be too quick to throw aside our venerable Planning Commission model for a completely untested approach to city planning. Thanks.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, Mr. Mayor, is Marie Bender.
I'm Marie Bender. I'm a Mercer Island resident. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and the City Council members for this opportunity to speak. The proposal to radically change the composition of the Planning Commission is being rushed through with no thought for real input by the residents of Mercer Island. The fundamental purpose of the Planning Commission is to ensure that the will of the citizenry is reflected in land use policies of the city. My observations of the proposal are: Commission members' connection to the community should be of the highest priority. The current composition allows for a commission drawn from many relevant community groups: North and South Island, retired, members with school-aged children, and a variety of life experiences. A commission of 3 paid land use professionals and only 2 members selected based on residency will not allow a reasonable degree of citizen input. Paid professionals, 2 not living on the island, will not prioritize setting aside time to meet with concerned citizens, so we will be relegated to our 3-minute presentations. Of the council members in favor of this proposal, I did not hear a word of concern for the public interest in planning commission decisions. What I did hear is concern for the amount of time necessary for staff to address an increased legal and regulatory burden. The council has not been presented with a definition of the problem, has not received quantification of the impact, nor a range of solutions. De facto, we, the residents of Mercer Island, have not either. Regulatory burden is a real issue. I know this is a member of the Open Space Conservancy Trust Board and its limited involvement in the open space zoning proposal. I appreciate the issue and think it should be addressed. And I think it can be addressed with consultants, just not as voting policymaking members of the Planning Commission. A budget should be proposed to provide training to the Commission, staff, and City Council so that all have the same basic understanding of what is required or allowed, and then ongoing technical input to the Planning Commission. Alternatively, consider augmenting the city staff with an experienced professional with relevant experience. Lastly, I would like to comment on the 3 jurisdictions staff identified. According to these cities' websites, none require a commissioner to be a land use professional. All require a residency or business nexus to the city, and all have 7 members on their commission. These examples do not in any way support the proposal to alter the commission's composition or requirement for membership. In conclusion, I think the council should withdraw this proposal and do the work of defining the problem and exploring alternatives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker tonight is Daniel Thompson.
Thank you. My name is Daniel Thompson. I'm a Mercer Island resident. I've already submitted written comments. I agree with this proposal. I think it makes sense. Going from 7 to 5 is a good move, and we need more expertise. I was very impressed by the presentation by Eastside Fire and Rescue. And I would remind you, last year, there was quite a bit of concern or opposition to merging the fire departments. And I thought that was one of the best moves the city and council made. And I think we're here again at this juncture to do that. Now, I followed the Planning Commission for the last 10 years and was intimately involved in rewriting the residential code that was adopted in 2017. What's being missed here is the fundamental question, why do we have a Planning Commission? The reason we have a Planning Commission is to represent the citizens against the city and the special interests. And the one party, the one group who for the last 10 years has been excluded from any of this process have been the citizens. The city does an absolutely miserable job of public notice. I have raised this over and over. I increased public permit notice in the 2017 code, but when it comes to these land use proposals, you don't get it. We're being told that the Planning Commission has spent an entire year amending the comprehensive plan when they had specific directions from this council not to make any amendments except those required by state law. And now the citizens are being told they're going to have 2 hours to show up and find out the amendments that have been made and that they were not part of. The other thing that is a real problem here is the tribal nature of the appointments by this council and the council under Bruce Bassett. The problem is the applicants you're getting and the applicants you're selecting represent strong ideological views or political motivations. And It's just bogging down the Planning Commission. Now, I think all of this goes back to the state mandated upzoning HB 1110. This goes back to Dan Grouse in 2018, with the understanding that the sub rosa amendments to comprehensive plans can be made that will then lead to development regulations that are not concurrent with the amendments. And I think that what we need coming up on 1110, and I would hope on this Planning Commission, is professional land use experience without any bias or political ambition or financial interest, giving the council what it has never gotten from the Planning Commission before, and that is what the citizens, the majority.
Thank you.
Our last speaker tonight is Meg Lippert.
Welcome.
Good evening, council members. My name is Meg Lippert. I live on Mercer Island, and I have listened to all of the comments that have been made this evening so far and the appearances. And it's a very confusing situation for me. I do feel that it's important that enough time be taken to make this important decision. And my priority is citizen input. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further?
There are
public
no further
appearances?
speakers.
Okay. We will now move to our next item of business, which is approval of the consent agenda. The consent agenda contains AB 6447, April 5, 2024 payroll certification, certification of claims for March 29 and April 5, 2024. City Council regular hybrid meeting minutes of April 2, 2024. AB 6448, Earth Day Proclamation number 326. AB 6446, Phase 1 PRV Station Replacement Bid Award. AB 6449, 2024 Legislative Session Recap. AB 6450, Fourth Extension Agreement to Interlocal Agreement with Mercer Island School District for Mary Wayte Pool, 2025 through 2034. AB 6442, Hiring Incentives for Lateral Police Officers. Council, would anybody like to pull any item from consent?
Mr. Mayor, I would.
Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum?
I'd like to pull AB 6442, Hiring Incentives for Lateral Police Officers.
Okay, AB 6442, Hiring Incentives for Lateral Police Officers will become our first item of regular business. Council, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum, seconded by Councilmember Weinberg. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Weicker?
Aye.
Councilmember Jacobson?
Aye.
Mayor Neese?
Aye.
Councilmember Andral?
Aye.
Councilmember Weinberg?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum?
Aye.
Councilmember Reynolds?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, motion passes and the consent agenda is adopted as amended. Our first item of regular business is AB 6442, Hiring Incentives for Lateral Police Officers, and I will turn it over to Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Thank you. I move to approve the lateral police officer hiring incentive programs for a 12-month trial period substantially in the form attached as Exhibit 1 with the following changes. Increase the total lateral hiring incentive from $20,000 to $40,000 and increase the total referral incentive from $5,000 to $10,000.
Second. Second.
Okay. Seconded by Councilmember Weinberg. City Clerk, did you capture the motion?
I did. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Council, any discussion? City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Weinberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Jacobson?
Aye.
Councilmember Reynolds?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum?
Aye.
Councilmember Weicker?
Aye.
Councilmember Andral?
Aye.
And Mayor Neese.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, motion passes. We'll move to our next item of regular business, which is AB 6453, Alternate Public Works Contracting Methods Discussion, and we welcome City Manager Jesse Bond.
Good evening, City Council. I am going to turn the floor over to Robbie Cunningham Adams for introductions. There he is. Thanks, Robbie.
Yep, sorry, I got the sun right in my eye here with my office. Good evening, council. Again, my name's Robbie, management analyst in the city manager's office. We have the pleasure of having a guest speaker, Deanna Brown from OAC. Before I hand this over to Deanna, as you remember, council, during the March 1st city council planning session, you approved a motion for us to begin design of a public safety and maintenance building. As part of the planning process for a building on the current City Hall campus, the city may wish to consider alternative public works contracting methods. And so our hope for tonight is to give you a little more information on what those options are for the city and the design and eventual construction of this facility. And we brought in outside expertise to help do that. So Deanna can pop on the screen here, and she's going to go through a presentation on the variety of kind of procurement methods we have, and we'll have question answer and have a discussion, but no action required of you, just question answers and discussion. Looks like Deanna's got your screen shared. I'll pass it on to Deanna.
Thank you, Robbie. Good evening, council. I'm elated that somebody asked the question about alternate delivery, but I'm here really just to give you a few I would say scratch the surface of delivery methods available to you. So I'm Diana Brown. I'm a senior director at OAC Services. I have been in the industry for over 20 years, guiding owners through a myriad of projects from schools to public safety facilities, using both traditional and alternate project delivery. We will be going through 4 different project delivery methods, as well as talking through what that alternate delivery legislation is and what the project review committee is. OAC is an owner's rep company that has been doing alternate delivery since 2007. RCW 3910 governs alternate public works delivery, and we have a myriad of projects that we have delivered under that 3910 RCW. So what is project delivery? Project delivery methodology is the structure of relationships, often contractual relationships within a project. These structures are arranged in such a way that allow you to define how the project is accomplished and give you some control over the risk, the speed, the control that you have, and the cost certainty. So that being said, it allows you to adjust this relationship. So if you are looking at the graph on the left-hand side of the screen, the middle is basically your lowest level. So ideally, you want low owner risk, you want high owner control, you want high cost certainty, and you want relatively fast delivery speed. Unfortunately, we don't have a magic bullet that will give you all of those, but we do have some options to be able to control some of those. So with project delivery methods, we're going to talk about design, bid, build. We're going to talk about general contractor construction management. We will talk about progressive design build, which is a relatively, I don't want to say it's new, but it's relatively new, and it's mostly practiced kind of in this Northwest area. And then we'll talk about traditional design build. So design, bid, build. This is the traditional way of delivering a project. This is the tried and true. Everybody uses it. It's the way that we deliver a project. You get 2 contracts, one with your designer, one with your contractor. The architect engineer is based on qualifications. You publicly advertise the project and you request for qualifications. That's what our SQ means. And they are selected. They go through design. That design is estimated at typically 30, 60, 90% design. You go through value engineering or scope cuts, making sure that you're within budget. There may be constructability review. At this point, there is no contractor involvement in the project. You have your design professionals, your architects and engineers, but no contractors. At that point, you advertise the project and bids are received and you select the general contractor based on your lowest price. So that is when your cost certainty happens, is when you get that price from your contractor. And so construction proceeds until it goes through the completion of the design. So this is really the procurement process. You develop design drawings and specifications, advertise for bid. Those bids are sealed and submitted to the city at a certain deadline. You typically have a public bid opening and it's awarded to the lowest bidder. So with design bid build, this has historically been a pretty tried and true way of delivering a project. It's great for simple projects. And really the idea is that you have the highest amount of risk with a design bid build because you own all of the errors and omissions that are in the contract documents because you have the contract with the architect and engineer. You have a lot of control because you do have that direct relationship with your designer and your engineer. Your cost certainty as you're moving through the design of the project is pretty low. You end up with estimates based on the documents that are provided by the architect and engineering firms, but this method is not very fast. So it's very linear in nature, and you have this is your design, then you go to advertise, and then you go to bid, or then you go to construction. So it really is not as quick as some of the other options that we have. Any questions on that? Is everybody familiar with the traditional design bid build?
Not seeing any questions. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. General contractor construction management, or construction manager. We call it GCCM for short in Washington State. You may also hear it be called construction manager at risk, CM at risk. In Oregon, they call it CMGC. We call it GCCM here in Washington. So GCCM, you still have two contracts. You have an owner-designer contract and a owner-contractor contract. The architect is still selected on a qualifications basis, and you work with that architect to develop the design. You then will select a contractor based on qualifications. There is a cost component, but there is no requirement that you have to select your general contractor based on low bid. And so it can just, it's qualifications and cost. And that contractor is brought on at about 30% design. And so this is where you start having that contractor input, is at about 30% design. We do like having all parties in the room so that it can affect the design earlier so that you can get cost certainty a little bit faster. It goes through its traditional design of the project, and at about 90 to 100% design, depending on your contractor, you will sign a maximum allowable construction cost. So this is what we call the MAC. That MAC is negotiated. The contractor will sign that, and then you start construction. There are options to to do what we call mini-max, which allow the contractor to purchase things or to do smaller work earlier in the contracting process. So this does potentially cut off some of the time in your process of design and construction. But that being said, you do not have subcontractor input at this point. So you just have a general contractor that's on board. You don't have mechanical and electrical subcontractors on board. There are opportunities to bring them on board, but you do have to get approval, and there are some legal regulations that you have to go through in order to do that. So this is typical procurement of GCCM. You will go out for, this is procurement of your contractor with GCCM. So you go out for an RFQ, request for qualifications, very similar to what you would have for a architect and engineer. You get statement of qualifications, and then you shortlist that contractor. At that point, you will hold interviews and score. And then you get a fee proposal to go along with that. And the team that is awarded is the team that has the highest score in the end. And that is a combined total of scores between the SOQ scoring, your interview scoring, and your fee scoring. So GCCM gives you a little lower risk when associated with traditional design build or traditional design bid build. You still own all of the errors and omissions because your contract is with the architect and engineer. The contractor is at the table, which mitigates a lot of those risks, but you still do have a moderate amount of risk. You do have a high control over the design and construction process. It is very collaborative. You do have a moderate speed. Like I said, there are these mini maps that you can do to do early procurement of long lead time items, such as generators right now have a long lead time item. I've seen mini maps used for early site work in order to get out of the ground before winter hits. And the contractor can help you really identify what those things are that will allow you to speed up the process. You do have moderate cost certainty. The contractor does perform estimating very similar to what you would see in a design bid build, where they're estimating design drawings at 30, 60, 90%. Oops, sorry about that. 30, 60, 90%. And then that cost certainty actually really only comes at that 90%, 90 to 100% when you actually set the map. One thing I will say with GCCM and moving forward with progressive design build and regular design build is that there are off-ramps with this type of delivery method. So if you cannot come to an agreement with a general contractor on the MAC, you can off-ramp and move into a design bid build process and just bid the job out. Any questions on GCCM?
Not seeing any. Oh, Councilwoman Jacobson.
Okay, great.
There you go, your first question.
Oh, what's up?
I'm referring, and I don't know if this is what you have as in Exhibit 1, page 16.
Exhibit 1,
And that's the
16.
GCCM selection process is the title of the slide.
There we go, that one.
And the weighting of the SOQs and the interviews and the pricing are the percentages that an owner allocates to that at the owner's choice?
It is, yes.
Thank you.
Yep, yeah. With each of these alternate delivery methods, GCCM and Progressive Design Build. The RCWs are I think, intentionally vague about how you weight this. So it can be heavily weighted on qualifications and less weighted on fee, or vice versa, depending on how you want to procure your GCCM contractor. I will say one of the other things that's a little bit unique about GCCM is that it does still give you a low bid price. So the GCCM contractor is required to bid out packages, and they are required to take the low bid subcontractor pricing, if that makes sense. All right, so Progressive Design Build. This is, I would say, not necessarily relatively new, but it is the newest of all of the alternate delivery options. So Progressive Design Build, you have one contract, and that one contract is with a contractor and an architect team. Typically, it's with the contractor because the contractor has to provide all of the bonding, and so they have that capability, whereas an architect probably doesn't have that. And so it's usually with the contractor, and the architect is teamed with that contractor, and it's a single contract. So that Progressive Design Build process is selection based on qualifications. There is a fee component to it, and we'll get to the procurement of it in the next slide. But the selected team is awarded both the design pre-construction services as well as the construction services. They work with the owner to develop a program. They go through a validation period, validating your scope, your schedule, and your budget. They talk through design requirements. They refine the cost. You'll hear, if you talk to somebody about Progressive Design Build, target value design, where basically your cost is driving your design instead of your design driving your cost. And you're selecting this team based on qualifications. This allows you to select a contractor and design team that maybe is a best value for you. You establish a guaranteed maximum price with that contractor and sign a contract for moving into construction. Again, this allows for an off-ramp. If you cannot get to a guaranteed maximum price with that contractor, you do have the ability to off-ramp and just do and just stick with your architect team and send this out for a public bid. So from a procurement standpoint, this is very unique in its, it's basically GCCM with a little bit of a twist, right? So this is an RFP process. You have that request for qualifications. The interested parties will provide a statement of qualifications identifying their proposed approach and why they are qualified and the best fit for this project. You then shortlist. You score those SOQs and you shortlist, usually to three firms. Then the owner will do interactive meetings and or interviews with those shortlisted firms. And then they provide, we issue them an RFP. That RFP is then submitted after a certain amount of time. That includes a management plan and a fee proposal. So the total scoring of the SOQs, the interviews, the management plan, and the fee proposal allow you to award to the highest scoring team. Again, that team does not have to be the lowest priced team. And as such, we a lot of times won't score the fee proposal isn't necessarily always weighted very high. There is a requirement for that fee proposal to happen, but we definitely look at progressive design build as being able to hire the most qualified team for your project. So progressive design build is unique in the fact that it lowers your owner's risk. So because you have a contract with the contractor and the architect, the errors and omissions that happen in typical traditional design bid build are not yours to own. They're actually the contractor's to own. And so that errors and omissions, once you sign the GMP, kind of goes away. What we see with progressive design build is change orders for change in scope and or unforeseen conditions, but we don't see a lot of change orders for missing items. Oh, we forgot to put in a door. So that's a nice lowering of your risk. You do have, I would say, moderate control. You still are collaborating with the design team and the contractor. It does open up the door to allow the contractor and the design team to work together to come up with innovative solutions for cost challenges that may occur during the process. You can speed up the process using progressive design build. There aren't any regulation requirements to allow them to bring on sub-consultants, so they can bring on their mechanical and electrical subs. You do have the option with contracting to do early work packages and early procurement of long lead time items. It's probably the most flexible in its contracting language. And you can do mini GMPs or phased GMPs with progressive design build in order to speed up that construction process. And then your cost certainty is, I would say, somewhat similar to GCCM. Maybe it's a little bit better because your contractor is working with your designer to actually inform that target price. And they are costing in real time, more so than GCCM. GCCM a lot of times is waiting for a produced set from your architectural team in order to cost that project. Whereas with progressive design build, you know, you have a lot of big room meetings that everybody is talking about cost at the same time that they're talking about design and selection of materials and project elements. All right, any questions on progressive design build?
Nope, not seeing any. Thank you.
Okay. And then we have design build. And I will say that the last design build project that was approved through Washington's project review committee was in first quarter of 2022. So we don't use traditional design build as much as we used to. With the introduction of progressive design build, this has kind of shifted out of popularity, I would say. It is very similar to progressive design build in the fact that your contract is a single contract between the owner and the design build firm. The owner develops performance standard. We typically call these bridging documents that help to support that procurement. You go out and advertise for the project, and you get qualifications packages from your design build teams. You then will shortlist to a couple of firms, and they will then go through a series of proprietary meetings that provide you with a design. So this is a competitive design process. So you'll get multiple design and cost package, multiple design with cost packages. It does benefit you in the fact that the team is competing for innovation. They are competing for price, but it also comes with an honorarium. So the teams will typically bring the design to about a 30% mark, and then submit the design and the proposal, and you score them, and you pick your firm that you want to design your project. The design build team will then, once you select that firm, they will go through a validation period, making sure that all of the assumptions are what they expected them to be before they sign a final cost with the owner. And so that becomes the GMP in that same way that a progressive design build becomes a GMP. That being said, it can cost you a little bit more because those honorariums are usually, I would say, a little bit higher. So you do still have an honorarium in a progressive design build project, but they're smaller because you're just asking the team to do a project management plan and interviews. In this situation, you're asking multiple teams to do about a 30% design. And so we're seeing, I would say, honorarium somewhere around 1% of the project cost. Yes.
Councilmember Anderall.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to get my hand up. I can wait until the end of this piece of it, but my question was just pretty simple. Can the owner control the number of proposals that are submitted? I mean,
yes.
Okay.
So yes. So let's go to the next slide here. So you ask for a statement of qualifications, very similar to progressive design build, and you then shortlist. And you can decide how many firms that you want to shortlist with. So you can shortlist with, of course, we would recommend a minimum of 2. And I have seen a minimum of 2 as far as a shortlisted design build competition. So with those 2 shortlisted firms then move into the RFP process, and that RFP process is, I think, a little more expensive in the fact that you're now having proprietary meetings with 2 firms to get to about a 30% design. I will also argue that we say it's a 30% design, but most design build teams that I have talked to, their design is usually probably more than 30% design by the time they submit it to you, because they do want to make sure that they hit all of the cost certainty that they are comfortable with when they give you that proposal, because that proposal is the design and the GMP number, right? So so they want to make sure that they have that GMP, that their cost is right for what they're saying they're going to deliver. Did that answer your question? Yeah. Okay, great.
Perfect. On that same vein, on the honorarium, the 1%,
Yeah.
are you paying the 1% to each one of the bidders you select, or is that in total?
So the honorarium is 1% to each team that is not selected. And the team that is selected then gets, their design fees, and their proposal is based on that, on absorbing that design into their GMP.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, so if your project is $100 million, you could be paying out an honorarium of, what is that, $1 million?
To each bidder that's not selected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets kind of spendy. What we see as far as design build is concerned, I would say that this is, if you're looking for high design, if you're looking at a project that is of a significant cost, then design build might be a good solution. We just don't recommend it as much anymore as we would progressive design build.
Got it.
For, I think, a couple of reasons. One, it does definitely lower your risk. It gives you a very high cost certainty, but it does, I would say, pull some of that control away from you and brings it kind of more towards the middle of this graph, right? But it does provide you with some pretty good speed on the project. The fully awarded design that you're getting continues on through the process, but getting into design and permitting and all of that kind of stuff. But you get to establish that price fairly soon in the process.
Councilmember Anderl, is that a new hand?
It is a new hand. And forgive me if I'm not trying to dumb it down for myself at all, but I can look at these charts side by side. But in some of the other analyses we've had done on other issues, we've had an analysis where things are kind of rated, red, yellow, green. So, super horrible control is red, super high speed is green, and neutral is yellow. Have you ever done anything like that on something like this, to just show it side by side? I don't want to ask you to do extra work, and I can probably do it myself if I just look at the slides next to each other, but well, look at you.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I think I think that what we are always trying to do with these alternate deliveries, where if we say the baseline is design, bid, build, what we're really trying to do is pull everything, I guess, to the lower right, where you have more cost certainty and greater speed. We like speed to market because escalation is a real thing. If you haven't noticed in the last 4 years, escalation is crazy. And so speed is always of the essence. But as you're pulling these things towards that cost certainty and speed, you're giving up certain things, right? I think it's nice to be able to give up that owner's risk. We like not having a lot of risk as an owner, but we also are giving up a little bit of control. And I think that in some ways, if you are an owner that likes a lot of control, then sometimes it's a little bit challenging to give up that control. And so selecting a delivery method, so I'll kind of back up a little bit. I mean, you've kind of, we've gotten to this slide, but selecting a delivery method is pretty difficult when we're talking in generalities. It's very subjective. It really depends on the team that you have running the project. It depends on your experience with these types of delivery methods. It depends on the project and whether or not there are a lot of risks associated with that project. And then it also depends on just your comfort level with contractors and with architects and engineers and your selection processes. I think that we tend to sometimes fall back into the traditional, right? That design, bid, build solution. Because it's comfortable and it's easy and everybody knows it and we've been doing it forever. But these alternate delivery options give you some opportunities to mitigate some of the things that we're seeing in the industry that cost money and time. Does that make sense?
Perfect, thank you.
I see another hand.
Councilmember Reynolds.
One of the things I'm very curious about is, you know, in a municipal government situation, getting a handle on cost early in the process so that we can figure out how to fund it is pretty important. Could you kind of rank these 4 options in terms of how long it takes and how much it costs to get to the point where you have a firm cap on the cost?
Okay, so in traditional design bid build, you don't have a firm handle on cost until it is advertised for bid, you get bids, and your low bid contractor is selected. So going into a low bid process, you could open up bids and they could be $2 million over what your engineer's estimate or your architect's estimate is. Or they could be 2 million under and you've just left $2 million worth of scope on the table. Architects and engineers are very savvy in the way that they do their process. I will say that, you know, they are good at identifying, okay, we have this cost, it might be a little bit more, let's put alternates into the project. But ultimately you won't know that price until you bid it. In a GCCM process, you have the contractor at the table at about 30% design. They are constantly checking with subs. They are constantly looking at the pricing that they're getting from other projects on materials like siding and flooring and concrete and that sort of thing. And so they have a pulse on that industry cost, but they are still working with a 30% design package. And so, you know, there's still 70% of the design to be completed. And so, you know, are they using high strength bolts or are they using these just normal bolts, right? So, so there's still some uncertainty because the design isn't fully fleshed out. Same with progressive design build. It's very similar, although you do have, I would say, some opportunities to get a little more real-time cost from your progressive design build team on the price of, you know, linoleum over, I don't know, hardwood or, you know, carpet. So I would say that if I was ranking speed of certainty, progressive design build is just a little bit better than GCCM. And then regular traditional design build is where it's at, right? You get that cost certainty at 30% design. Because that's the proposal that you get from the design build team, is that you get this 30% design and you get a cost proposal for it.
May I ask a quick follow-up? I'm just a little uncertain what that last part means, because it seems like you're getting certainty at the 30% design point, but you can't have real certainty until you're at 90 or 100% design, can you?
Can I just say, you don't have certainty until the ribbon's cut, and then even after that, you often have issues. So I don't want to give the impression that there won't be changes or things we're adapting to throughout the construction all the way, you know, right up to the end. So
if our goal is to put something to the voters, a levy, for example, would we do that in one of the latter options at the 30% design point at the bid we had at that point?
actually, I have a suggestion. What I'd like to do, Diana, if you don't mind, could you just run through those last couple slides, stop screen sharing? The deputy mayor has a question, and then I can jump in here and talk about where we are in the project phasing and answer your question.
Yeah, sure. All right. So, so that being said, how to select a delivery method? There are a lot of analytical tools out there. However, I think every owner and every project is very unique, and so it takes a little bit of subjective criteria in order to select that process. All right. So, in any alternate delivery option, The only option that you have that you do not have to go for approval on is design bid build. GCCM, progressive design build, and regular design build require approval. As a public agency, you have to have a reasonable budget with contingencies totaling not less than 5% of the anticipated contract value. The agency must have staff or consultants with expertise and prior experience on that type of project, comparable projects. The contract documents, so your contract with your contractor, your GCCM contractor, or your progressive design build contractor, or your design build contractor has to include underutilized firms such as WBE, veteran and small businesses, and your evaluation and approval. You have to have approval from the project review committee. And so with alternate delivery, the project review committee was established by Washington State. It is RCW 3910. It's a governing body. It's made up of 30 industry professionals. They are labeled the Capital Projects Advisory Review Board. They meet on almost every other month, sometimes every month, regularly. You submit an application about a month before the meeting, and in the meeting you present your project, your qualifications, and they have a discussion in front of you and either approve or deny your application to use some sort of alternate delivery on your project. All right.
All right.
So that's all I got.
Let's have you stop your screen share, Diana. Thank you. So back to Councilmember Reynolds' question, just to give you an idea of where we are in the process. We are in what's called pre-design right now. We're at the very ground level, literally, looking at site conditions and getting information about the site to inform our design. We have an architect that we hired actually last year to do a slightly different body of work around a long-range facility planning, but we quickly retooled and regrouped, and they are leading that pre-design work for us. When we come to you in June, it'll probably be late June or that first July meeting, we will be at about 5% of the design. So council, you hear us using 30, 60, 90 often when we're coming to you with project updates. So just to put that in perspective, we'll be at around 5% in June. We'll have a very early cost estimate and a very early program. So if we want to use an alternative method, it will probably be something we'll be talking about shortly thereafter as we continue our work and we check in with you. Councilmember Reynolds, if the desire was to go to the ballot this coming November, the council would have to make that decision in July at 5% design, so it would be ahead of this alternative, design procurement process having kicked in. It kind of depends, but my best guess is we'd be at 30% design somewhere around November, December, just depending on how things go. So that's where we're at. I haven't made a recommendation to you yet. I wanted to get this presentation in front of you just for information. We don't use these methods for the type of projects we do at the city. I think we need to consider it. There's a couple reasons, but one of the main things for us is we are going to be building on a campus that we're actively using, right? So it's gonna involve phasing, and I think a traditional design bid build is not going to be conducive. I think we'll have better efficiency, faster timeline, deliverable, when we can get a little more creative. Like Diana was mentioning, we could go and build one building on the public works site, come back and take down City Hall. It can be laid out and adapted. It's a little more flexible. That's just my gut reaction. The other thing is that we're dealing with supply chain issues on all of our capital projects. We've had a year or more delays on things from, generators to steel. And we know this is proposed to be a level 4 facility, so the hardiest type of building we would build to meet our essential public services. I guarantee it's going to have lots of components with long lead times, 18, 24 months even in some worst case scenarios. So that's another reason that we might want to look at an alternative approach. So that's just a quick snapshot. I see we have several hands up. I think Deputy Mayor, I took your turn. Sorry about that.
No worries. Diana, thinking about this control a little bit more, should we be thinking about this as a control throughout the process, or as control at a specific place in the process in which we have more in one version than we would in another?
I think that really the idea is that you may, how should I put this? I would say from a control standpoint, you always have control over your project, but you may not necessarily have, I don't want to say control, but I think that there's this idea with alternate delivery that you are really exploring the idea of getting the most out of your project. And so you may have to, I want to say compromise, but maybe compromise because you wanted to do masonry and, the contractor is like, hey, there's like 7 other masonry jobs happening. And so I know you wanted to do masonry, but the cost of masonry is X, Y, and Z. And so if you are willing to go with, I don't know, steel construction instead of masonry, then, we can save you X, Y, and Z. And so it isn't necessarily control that you're giving up. It's I would say it's allowing the design and the contractor to innovate during the design process to mitigate the cost and schedule impacts that design a lot of times without a contractor affects. Does that make sense?
I think so. I might have some follow-ups for you down the road. Thank you.
Okay.
Councilmember Jacobson.
First of all, I want to thank you, Diane. It's a very compact and thorough and broad covering of the subject. And there are a lot of moving parts to it. I come from a contractor background, so I've done all these things. I've also represented owners in them and other things, so I'm conversant, and your presentation was excellent. My question is this. How likely is the PRC to approve an alternate design process for an owner that doesn't have any prior experience in either one of those and doesn't have any experience in building projects of this size? Size meaning money,
Yeah. So your team consists of your staff as well as others that you have hired to help you navigate the process, right? And so you have hired us, OAC, as your owner advisor. And so we bring a wealth of knowledge that is a lot of alternate delivery, going through the PRC, and also of, projects of this size. I am doing a progressive design build project for Snohomish County 911 right now. It's a $68 million 911 dispatch center. It's an essential facility, and so we have all of the experience and wealth of knowledge that will stick with you through the process in order to make sure that this is a successful project.
Well, let me ask the question a different way, and that is, without having an OAC or an entity similarly qualified, I'm inferring that we'd have a tough go with a PRC without having that slot filled by someone that
Somebody.
has substantial experience.
Yeah.
Is that a fair
Yeah.
assessment?
Let me take that question, Diana. Maybe I should have started with that from the beginning, is we will be hiring consultants to help us through that process, Councilmember Jacobson. You are correct. While you have staff members that have done major construction projects like this, we have to have somebody that has expertise on alternative delivery, and so we would need to bring on OAC in that role. That will be part of the requirement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Weicker.
So this question is for you, Jesse and Jason. So I'm imagining you brought this forward to educate us and then also kind of prepare us for whatever recommendation you might have. So I'm wondering what other cities around us have used whichever model and which one you're thinking would work the best for the project that we're thinking about in the community we're trying to do this in.
Need to spend some more time with the staff. It's probably between the GCCM or progressive design build alternatives. I think design build is likely off the table. There are some nuances though with progressive design build, including the fact that we already have an architect on board. So I've got to do some work behind the scenes to dig a little bit deeper. I think the other thing I need to just share for awareness is, again, we came into this a little bit unexpectedly and quicker than we thought. And so we are in design right now, and Council, you've been appropriating funds. We had set aside a little bit of money for the project last year. We'll likely recommend, the staff will be recommending to you, I believe it's at the next council meeting, that the funds in excess from 2023 year end also be applied to support this project. But one of the things that happens with these alternative delivery methods is the costs start ramping up a little bit faster than with traditional design bid build. And so we have to have a financing conversation about that too. How do we keep the project moving and time that with a potential ballot measure? And so that's the work that's ahead of me. So that recommendation is coming.
Thank you. Councilmember Reynolds.
I have a question for the city manager. I'm sure it's going to fall on the stupid question list. If I understood the timing that you were suggesting, possible ballot measure in November, 30% design in, I think you said November/December. How do we know how much to ask for?
Well, if the council were to make a decision to go to this ballot, you would be basing that decision on a 5% design scope of work, and it would have a contingency on that number. And we're not there yet, so I haven't spoken to the architect. It's probably in the ballpark of 20 to 25% at 5% design. So that's that's some certainty, but not fully designed yet.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I seem to recall that in our normal public works projects, sewers, roads, constructions, et cetera, they're all done doing a design bid build structure. And I think we normally have a 15 or 20% contingency on those, don't we?
Yeah, it depends on the project. There's projects that we know for sure we're going to run into issues with. So we sometimes carry a higher contingency. We can carry 10% on projects that are relatively low risk, but you're right, we still carry typically 20%.
So it's not a whole lot more than that for making a bid at a much lower stage or much earlier stage in the process. It's kind of interesting to me, but okay.
Yeah, and sitting here today, we've barely scratched the surface right now on just the site conditions assessment. So it's really early for me to even make those commitments.
Okay, council, any other questions? All right, Diana, thanks for the presentation, and we'll move on to our next item of regular business.
Thank you.
Our next item of regular business is AB 6452, 2023 Washington City's Electrical Code Ordinance Number 24C05, first reading and adoption. We welcome CPD Director Jeff Thomas.
Yes, good evening, Council. I'd like to start actually by just introducing Don Cole, our building official. He's joining us here this evening to help answer any questions that may come up. I have just a few quick comments, and then Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you. This Washington City's electrical code, we just received on April 1st, kind of the final version of what cities that are using it needed to adopt. So we got a little jammed up there through the process from the State Building Code Council onto the Washington City's electrical code jurisdictional committees. And getting it on April 1st obviously wasn't very timely for bringing it to the council here on April 2nd, your last meeting. So here we are on the 16th to present it to you. And the staff recommendation with the agenda bill is to adopt the ordinance 20C-05 that's in your packet with this agenda bill, and do it with at first reading under City Council Rules of Procedure 6.3 C3. That would allow the codes to go into effect 5 days after adoption. So with that, Mayor, we're happy to try and answer any questions the council may have, but I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, can't guarantee that we will have any, but to the extent that there are any questions, I'm not seeing any. Council, is there a motion to adopt at first reading under City Council Rules of Procedure 6.3 C3, ordinance number 24C05, amending Chapter 17 MICC with updated additions of the construction codes?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Jacobson, seconded by Councilmember Reynolds. Any discussion? City Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Weiger.
Aye.
Mayor Neese.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Is absent.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Aye.
Councilmember Andral.
Aye.
Councilmember Weinberg.
Aye.
And Councilmember Jacobson.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, motion passes. Our next item of regular business is AB 6455, project update on 80th Avenue sidewalk improvements, and we welcome Public Works Deputy Director Patrick Yamashita and maybe Jason Kittner. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. For the record, I'm Patrick Yamashita, your Deputy Public Works Director. The agenda bill before you tonight is an update on 80th Avenue sidewalk improvement project. This project is located on the east edge of the town center, and it's been in our 6-year transportation improvement program for several years now. Clint Morris, our Capital Division Manager, and Ian Powell, our street engineer, will be giving the presentation this evening. With that, I'll turn it over to Clint and Ian.
Thank you, Patrick. Members of the council, good evening. As Patrick said, I'm Clint Morris, your Capital Division Manager, and Ian, our street engineer, is here with me as well. We wanted to give you an update on this project tonight. Next slide, please, Patrick. This 80th Avenue, as Patrick said, it's the east boundary of the town center, and we wanted to talk to you about this project tonight because when this goes to construction, it's going to be very visible in the town center. Tonight, Ian and I are going to touch on a little bit of project background. I'm going to hand it off to Ian. He's going to talk about sidewalk conditions and some solutions that we've developed. He's going to talk about tree replacements, and then I will talk about the street lighting and budget, and then we'll have some questions and discussions at the end. Next slide. So this project is focused on the east side of 80th Avenue. We've got a map here. North is to the right, and 80th Avenue is running along the bottom of that drawing. It goes past the landmark villa condos and Bank of America property. And then we have also another small area that's linked to this project. It's on 78th Avenue on the west side. That's up at the very top of the map there. It's in front of the Newell Court building. This project the northern boundary of this project is the Southeast 27th Street intersection, and Sound Transit will be constructing a new traffic signal there later this year. Next slide. So a little background on 80th. The curbs and sidewalks and street trees and street lighting, most of that infrastructure dates to the 1970s and into the 1980s. In the mid-90s, when the city undertook a large street reconstruction project that tackled 77th Avenue and 78th Avenue, we did the west side of 80th Avenue, but we did not do the east side. So the east side is still this 40 and 50-year-old infrastructure. It's got significant areas of uneven sidewalk. The trees have heaved a lot of the panels. We have sidewalk landings at the intersection corners that don't meet the current Americans with Disabilities Act standards. And with all that said, we as staff, we view this project kind of as a replacement project versus building a bunch of brand new stuff. The main thrust of this project is we're replacing sidewalks and lights that have gotten really old, and it's just time for them. As you can see in this photograph, there's multiple panels here along Landmark Villa that are thrusted up quite a bit. In general, the layout of this is going to stay the same, although Ian's going to point out a few little changes that we're making to improve the sidewalk and preserve some of the street trees. Unfortunately, this project is going to be removing some trees. We've tried to balance keeping as many as we can where possible. So I'm going to hand this off to Ian, and he's going to talk to you about sidewalks and trees. So Ian, take it away.
Good evening, Council. My name is Ian Powell, and I'm your street engineer. Next slide. Oh, there we go. So I'm going to start off showing you some pictures of the existing sidewalk conditions along 80th. Just want to note we're starting at the south end of the project, so 32nd, and we'll slowly work our way north through these pictures. You can see in this first picture on the left, the existing sidewalk is being heaved by that tree. You can see the root mass from that tree between the curb and the sidewalk. That root mass is also under the sidewalk, causing that heaving. You can also see the patching that our right-of-way team has tried to do to try and help with the unevenness of the sidewalk, but this is just no longer sufficient. And you can also see the pink paint on the sidewalk. That's to delineate the heaved panels and the edges of those panels that are not even with the other panels. The picture on the right, you can see the existing sidewalk is separated from the street and much higher than the street. The plan is in this section to remove the existing sidewalk and curb and gutter and shift the new sidewalk down to that gray area in the picture. Doing this will impact parking on 80th slightly. Currently there is parallel parking on both sides of 80th, but this new sidewalk alignment will take about 4 of those spots. Some of this area is already designated as no parking because of the hydrant and just being on that curve, but some parking will be impacted. The advantage of moving this is getting it at street level. It also allows us to retain trees on the south end of this project, retain existing trees. That also keeps us away from that rock wall that you can see in the back of that picture. Having to do construction near that wall, not knowing how deep it is, it's a benefit to just stay away from that. Next slide, please. So moving around the bend, this is now going north on 80th between 32nd and 30th. On the picture on the left, you can see it's just another angle of where that sidewalk is now tying in to the new sidewalk. This allows us to retain that tree that's closest to us in the picture. But then moving north along 80th, those trees will have to be removed and replaced. You can see them leaning out pretty far over 80th there. The center picture is a little further up 80th. This shows in front of the apartment building, and the existing staircase is not aligned with the staircase going into the apartments. The staircase will be moved to make it better aligned. This is another good angle of seeing how that sidewalk is higher than the existing street. And then the third picture on the right is just more examples of sidewalk heaving, temporary patches, and just the poor condition of the sidewalk that does not meet the American with Disabilities Act grade requirements. Next slide. So this next two pictures are from Southeast 30th to Southeast 28th. The picture on the left is in front of the Bank of America. In this area, we are able to slightly raise the grade of the sidewalk to gain enough room between the existing street trees and the existing edge of right-of-way. The existing edge of right-of-way is just off the backside of that sidewalk, but raising the grade slightly gives us enough width to meet ADA requirements and retain these trees. However, if you look at the picture on the right, this is at the north end of this block, almost to 28th. You can see these two trees have grown well into the sidewalk. There's not enough room with these trees in the existing root mass and the existing right-of-way to fit new sidewalks, so these trees will have to be removed and replaced. Next slide. These two pictures are from the next block up, from 28th to 27th. The picture on the left shows some of the existing street trees. You can see that these are much smaller than the previous trees. That's due to the smaller tree pits and the smaller soil volume. These trees aren't as healthy as the previous trees just because of that reduced volume. So the goal would be to remove these and provide more soil volume to get healthier trees along this stretch. You can also see on the right-hand side, there's more examples of poor ADA access. The driveway coming off of 80th there is very steep. The existing sidewalk matches that grade, so you have some kind of extreme cross slopes on those ADA ramps. And then this is the very north end of the project, so just past this driveway is 27th, and that will tie into Sound Transit signal and ADA ramp project there. Next slide. And then these last pictures are the section that Clint mentioned on 78th at the Newell Court building. This is on the west side of 78th, just south of 30th. You can see in these two pictures, the existing sidewalk is both sinking and heaving in different areas. There's also issues with the existing doorways for the buildings on the Newell Court building. The grade of the doorway is higher than the grade of the sidewalk, so they don't line up, which causes a tripping hazard. Some of these doorways aren't even used by these businesses for that reason. So the plan here is to remove existing curb, gutter, sidewalk, and trees and reinstall everything except for the illumination will stay. But that will fix those grade issues and the heaving and sinking issues of the sidewalk. Next slide. So this is our proposed tree layout. This is the back at the south end of the project. This is from 32nd to 30th. You can see at the south end on 32nd where we're changing the alignment to be lower to be at the existing street grade. You can see the grayed out trees are trees that are existing and will remain. The new alignment allows those trees to stay. You can also see some new trees in there that will go where the old sidewalk is now. Once it's removed, new trees can go in there. And then once you go around the bend and start heading up 80th, all those trees will be removed and replaced, and they will be placed in, or they'll be planted in the existing tree planter between the curb and the sidewalk. Next slide, please. So the next block, this is from 30th to 28th in front of Bank of America. And like I mentioned before, we can fit the new sidewalk between those trees and the right-of-way. That's why those trees are grayed out. They are staying, but I also showed those two other trees that need to be removed. They are at the north end of this block, and they will be planted in new modular planting cells, which I will cover in a later slide. Here we'll have a 5-foot roadway planter and a 5-foot sidewalk. Next slide. And then this is the north end of the project from 28th to 27th and the 4 trees at Newell Court. All of these trees will be removed and replaced. They will also be planted in a modular planting cell. The Newell Court area is very wide. The 27th to 28th area is much narrower, so you kind of have varying planter sizes and varying sidewalk widths in these areas. And then total trees within the project footprint, there's 47 existing trees, 29 are to be removed and replaced, while 18 will be retained. Next slide. So the image on the left on this slide is the modular planting cell that I mentioned. These cells go under the new sidewalk. They have multiple purposes. One is they provide a rigid structure for the sidewalk to sit on. They provide support for that sidewalk. At the same time, they allow you to place soil underneath them, and they give room for the root masses of the trees to expand. They also create a barrier between the new root masses and the new sidewalk, so you can prevent heaving in the future, and we won't have this problem down the road that we'd have to come back and fix. So they provide structure, provide more soil volume, and prevent root heave. The more soil volume you have for a tree, the healthier the tree will be. It will grow faster, provide more cover and shade. And then the 2 images on the right are trees that we are proposing planting on this project. Both trees, the wildfire tupelo and the emerald sunshine elm, when planted, will be approximately 12 to 14 feet tall, but the mature tupelo can be over 40 feet and the mature elm over 30 feet. And with that, I will hand this back to Clint.
Thanks, Ian. One thing I wanted to point out about the trees that were planted 40 to 50 years ago, the red maples and the London plane trees, both of those are known to be what one arborist called kind of surface root offenders. They like to grow extensive masses of surface roots. So we are moving away from those species of trees and moving to the tupelo and the elm here have generally smaller root masses when they are mature, and they are not prone to the massive surface roots that we've been fighting in the town center. Okay, let's talk about some street lighting. Next slide, please. So back in the 70s and 80s, all of the downtown area or the town center got a street lighting system, and it was wooden poles like the middle photo here. When we did the street reconstruction work in the 90s, we replaced most of the lighting system from the 1970s. But 80th Avenue is kind of the last remaining area of that 1970s electrical system and these old wooden poles. So with this project, we're going to remove the last 20 or so wooden poles on both sides of 80th. We're going to install some new concrete poles, which will match some of the existing concrete poles that have been installed over the last 20 years or so, as the wooden poles have rotted away and needed to be changed. So ultimately, 80th is going to have these concrete poles down both sides. The right photograph there shows what those look like. And the existing poles are going to be retrofitted with LED fixtures. The new poles will have LED. The new lighting system is going to get its own control cabinet, and all new wiring and some new conduits. But when we did that upgrade in the mid-90s on the west side of 80th, we installed conduits specifically for future lighting work. So we're going to be able to utilize that work from the 90s finally as the primary feed for all of these new lights. So it's not as much work because of the conduits there that we've got from that prior work in the 90s. Next slide, please.
Clint, can I quickly ask, the light
Yes.
that was the wooden pole looked like it had a fixture that matches what's on the concrete pole. Is it already LED out on the wooden poles?
I think that our right-of-way team has done an LED retrofit on those wooden poles, but I don't know. I don't think the new electrical system that the engineers have designed for us, I don't think it's the same voltage as this old system. So I don't know if these LEDs from the wooden poles can be switched over or not. I don't think they can, because I think we've got different voltage systems here.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, though. So let's move on to project cost and budget. We put together a quick table here. These are estimates because we don't have construction bids yet, but it is looking like the sidewalk work is a little over $1 million. And that's to remove, regrade, or the new concrete sidewalks. The tree work, which would be the removal, the tree planting cells and the new trees, is about $225. And the lighting system is, as you can see there, it's a little over $500,000, getting us to about $1.8 million in construction. Once we add what we call our soft costs, that's contingency, that's the design costs, that's project management for staff to administer the construction contract. That gets us to a total estimated project of a little over $2.4 million. In the current capital budget, we have, as you can see, a little over $1.3 million budgeted. When we come back to you here in June for a contract award, we plan to request an allocation of the sound transit mitigation funds to cover the difference here between what the capital budget has and what the total project cost will be. Next slide, please.
A quick question from Councilmember Weicker.
Sure.
Clint, are we able to use some PSC street lighting funding? Do they still have that program?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if they have an upgrade program that we could fit into. We could certainly look at that and see.
Fantastic. Try to get some money from them. Julian Lowe is your guy.
Project timeline, we are hoping to get our design work finalized by early May so that we can advertise for construction bids in kind of mid-May. I believe we're on the schedule for the second June meeting to come back to council for a construction contract award. And then we're looking at construction in that July to December timetable. Again, we'll know more once we get a contractor on board. Communications moving forward. We will be contacting the affected properties and businesses. We plan to engage with the Chamber of Commerce. We will be standing up a Let's Talk page here later this week. And we have a project page on the city's website under Public Works. And we would be happy to take any other questions you have.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Councilmember Jacobson.
Clint, what's the approximate timeframe for the Tupelo and the Sunshine Elm, or whatever it's called, to reach maturity?
That is a great question, and I don't know the answer to that. Let me see if Elaine could take that question.
Good evening, Council. Elaine Summergren, Deputy Public Works Director. I can't speak to it exactly. I do know that I believe the elm is a slightly slower growing version, but it will take several decades for them to reach the full height that Ian indicated in the slide. That's a good thing. It means stronger trees and they have good root development. So it will take several decades for them to reach that size.
Well, if there's a closer estimate, I know there are some people in the city that are going to be asking that question. So,
Right.
You know, for the sake of communicating that or knowing in advance how to answer those questions, it'd be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderl.
Yeah, can we go back to the project cost slide?
Sure.
The numbers didn't add up in my head. I think I must be missing something.
I'm sorry, bear with me for a moment.
Sure. Yeah, so the construction cost, so the 1.8 plus 3.4 does not add up to 2.4. Adds up more like to 2.16.
Oh, you're right. We may have a bad number in there for the contingency design project management. Because we'd be running a 10% contingency, which would be 180. We may have missed a couple of costs in there. I apologize for
Okay,
that.
well,
I
if
believe
you
that
wouldn't mind reconciling that so that we know exactly what we're
we
what we're
will
looking at.
certainly have a better cost table when we come back to you.
Thank you.
I apologize for that. I believe the 2.4 number is right, but I think something's haywire there in the contingency design project management number.
Council.
It's correct in the agenda bill. It looks like we're missing one of the line items is currently on page 3 in your agenda packet, but we'll make sure that we come back to the council. It's revised correctly in both the agenda bill and the presentation.
Very well. Council, any other questions? Maybe Jason, this is a quick question for you, but when we did the intersection at 77th and Sunset Highway, there was some forethought put into infrastructure that could be replaced at the same time. Is there anything in this corridor that is from a water sewer perspective, stormwater, that needs to be done that's not getting done?
Not to my knowledge. Our team did a thorough evaluation of all the infrastructure in that area, and we lumped in what we could with this project. That's why you're seeing both the lighting as well as the ped improvements here. But I will say, you mentioned earlier, this does tie into the sound transit intersection at 87th or 80th and 27th, which includes the lighting and ped access as well. So.
Excellent.
Patrick, anything else you want to add? Go ahead.
All right, looks like that might be it. Last call for questions. Moving on. All right, thanks Ian, thanks Clint, thanks Jason,
Okay.
thank
Thank
you
you all.
Patrick. Appreciate it. All right, our last item of regular business is AB 6454, Reconstitution of the Planning Commission, consideration and amendments to the MICC Chapter 3.46, Ordinance Number 24C06, first reading, and we welcome CPD Director Jeff Thomas.
Thank you again, Mayor. Allie's going to just share screen here quickly for a minute or two. Got just two slides actually I'd like to cover with the council before you get to your discussion on this matter. This is coming back to us from April 2nd when the council was presented with some options that they went through menu style to give staff some additional direction. So Allie, next slide, please. what we'd like to do here tonight, this is first reading of ordinance 24C-06. And before we get to the council discussion on it, there are a couple of items I'd like to mop up here that staff would recommend we include in the second reading in the ordinance if council is going to move it forward to second reading. I'd like to, Mayor, just walk through these. There's 4 items. I'd like to quickly walk through them one by one for the council so they understand these mop-up items for potential second reading. Item number 1 here is in addition to section 1 of the ordinance, so it would amend chapter 3.46030B3 here in the short term, which is what section 1 of the ordinance deals with. And what this would be doing would be adding just additional clarification that all of the current planning commissioner terms would expire on December 31st of this year. That's what that section is speaking to with moving from 7 seats to 5 seats. And this language would just clarify that those seats would expire on December 31st. And then Exhibit A of the ordinance is actually then all the language that would become effective in 2025 for the new planning commission. So that's item number 1. And I actually want to also just add items 1 and 2 were a result of questions that Councilmember Reynolds sent to staff at the top of the week here to help out here a little bit. So item number 2 moves to Exhibit A, which again is the language that will become effective for the new planning commission in 2025. And item 2 is just simply striking, it's repetitive here where we've got 5 years of experience twice in the same sentence. What happened initially was we had a different number for the first 5, so that language that's being struck was relevant. But with moving it, I believe that was a council direction that moved it back to 5 years. We don't need to have that extra language anymore. So that's item 2. Item 3 is almost a mirror image of that. It's subsection A3 instead of A1, and it's just doing the same thing. It's just striking where we've got 3 years of experience duplicated there in the same sentence. So then finally, item 4, again in Exhibit A. This actually was an error by yours truly. The language, I believe, that was put forward might have been from Councilmember Weinberg initially, adding to the menu choices on April 2nd that any vacancy may be filled by a resident layperson if unable to find a qualified paid practitioner. That sentence did not make it into the draft ordinance in your packet, and I apologize for that. So we would be adding that in for second reading. And then just with the qualifier there at the bottom of the slide, that we would have the city attorney just do an extra review on that to make sure there were no other conflicts which would prevent this clause from being implemented. We don't want this language to conflict with anything else in the ordinance in Exhibit A. So next slide, please. Last but not least, should the council be so inclined here this evening to move this to second reading, the recommended action then would be to move to schedule second reading and adoption of ordinance number 24C-06 as amended for May 7th, 2024. And with that, Mayor, I think we'll stop the slide share and turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you for that. Council, any discussion, any questions? Councilman Reynolds.
Yeah, I want to thank the council first, start with that, for the changes we made in the last meeting on this. I had a lot of concerns with the initial proposal. I still have concerns, but this is a lot better than it was, so thank you everybody for being open to that. Most of my substantial concerns remain, though. Notably, I'm concerned about bringing in outside forces to make decisions for the Mercer Island community. And a variety of other things as well that I won't repeat myself on from prior meetings, but one thing that has changed since the prior meeting is we've gotten a lot of community feedback on this issue. And the vast majority of the feedback, at least that I've seen, largely shares my concerns and is pretty uniformly consistently against the change. And I think it's appropriate to listen to that feedback and stop and consider, as I've mentioned before, what problem it is we're really trying to solve and why we believe this is the correct solution. I don't think we've defined the problem properly, and I don't think we've stopped to consider what other means there may be available to address it. So I'll be opposing this measure tonight.
Very good. Looking for, okay, Councilmember Weinberg.
Yeah, so I have a motion to make for the next reading. I move that we direct staff to add a clause to the appropriate part of the ordinance establishing a quarterly meeting between the mayor and the chair of the Planning Commission and staff. And the purpose of the meeting is to identify the elements of the Planning Commission's work plan, which the commission can realistically address in the forthcoming quarters, and any proposed updates from the work or to the work plan shall be presented to the full council for approval or adjustment at the next regularly scheduled meeting. And this is a motion that I sent to the city clerk and to the council ahead of time. I just read it as it was presented in the mail.
Very well. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Moved by Councilmember Weinberg, seconded by Councilmember Reynolds. This is a verbatim of the email that was sent. You want to speak to the motion?
Yeah, sure. So this change would ensure that the council's goals are clearly communicated to all the participants of the process, and it would maximize the likelihood of timelines being met. It mitigates the risk of surprises, and it surfaces process concerns more efficiently and in a more timely manner. And it provides data also to help justify getting additional grant funding for hiring planning consultants to assist staff in the future. So I encourage everyone to support this amendment.
Thank you. Councilmember Andral.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this, and I think this crosses the line over what council should be doing versus what the city manager should be doing. I trust Jesse to schedule meetings as appropriate and necessary. Our job is really, to guide the city from a policy perspective and a financial perspective. I'm not going to start approving motions that direct Jesse for time, manner, and purpose of meetings. I trust her to do her job, which includes that as appropriate. And so for that reason, I will not support this.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Yeah, I think this is a good idea. I mean, I think having these kind of communications is worthwhile to make sure that we're all on the same page and have the same expectations in terms of what can be accomplished and what can't be. My only concern is that I don't think this should be in the code. I think this is something that belongs in our rules of procedure as something that should be handled there, not in our city code where all of our laws are. But I think the idea is good. I just think we should revisit when we do our, next time we look at our rules of procedure.
Okay. Any other discussion? Not seeing any. Please call the roll.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
No.
Councilmember Weinberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Aye.
Councilmember Jacobson.
Nay.
Councilmember Weicker.
Nay.
Mayor Neese.
Nay.
And Councilmember Andral.
Nay.
Motion fails.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
I move to schedule the second reading and adoption of ordinance number 24C-06 for May 7th, 2024.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Add a friendly amendment of as amended after 24C06.
I'll accept the friendly amendment.
Okay. City Clerk, did you capture the motion?
I did capture the motion. I did not capture the second.
The second is Councilmember Jacobson. Okay, any discussion? City Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Deputy Mayor oh, wait, wrong one. Yep, Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Aye.
Councilmember Weicker.
Aye.
Councilmember Jacobson.
Aye.
Councilmember Andral.
Aye.
Mayor Neese.
Aye.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Nay.
And Councilmember Weinberg.
Nay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, motion passes. We now move to other business in the planning schedule, and we welcome City Manager Jesse Bond.
Good evening again, City Council. No updates or changes to the planning schedule based on what's in your packet. I do want to call out, I'm going to have Andrea, our city clerk, reach out to you this week regarding the July 2nd meeting and your preferences. We have staff available to hold that meeting as scheduled, but we need to check your availability. It's very close to the July 4th holiday. Other than that, that is all I have this evening.
Okay, council, any upcoming absences to report? Councilmember Weicker.
So I will not be available on July 2nd.
Okay. And not any others? There's, yeah, answer for you. Councilmember reports. We'll move to Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Yeah, first I want to wish a very happy birthday to Councilmember Reynolds, who has decided for some reason to spend his birthday here with us. Can't imagine there's anything else you'd rather be doing. There was an interesting PIC meeting last week. I connected with BO about this, but there's a potential change from the Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court, that has to do with lowering the threshold for which someone would be eligible for public defense in the criminal system. What that means is that more people would be eligible, and to a pretty significant number. So Bureau's on top of that one, but I thought it was interesting discussion at the PIC, as well as another very interesting discussion about KCRHA and the future there, and trying to give some recommendations to the representatives there about what the future might look like. Other than that, nothing to report. Happy birthday again, Craig.
Yeah, I have nothing to report, but wishing you the best of happiest of birthdays. Thanks for spending almost all of it with us this evening. Councilmember Weicker.
Nothing to report.
All right, Councilmember Weinberg.
The Mercer School District held its second meeting of the Artificial Intelligence Policy Work Group on April 15th, which I'm part of. The focus group has identified four possible sets of, or four primary sets of principles and beliefs around transparency and accountability, and training educators and educating students, and maintaining personalization and creativity while increasing engagement, and also teaching ethics and addressing plagiarism in the space of artificial intelligence. The focus group is working on formulating value statements and priorities based on those core principles. In summary, the group has already decided that the school district is not going to attempt to ban or prohibit the use of AI in our classrooms, but we will try to define and ensure the ethical practices are followed in the areas of attribution and critical analysis. And it's working on a similar policy for the city of Seattle, so I think we'll eventually want to do something similar at the city of Mercer Island, but gain some practice first.
Excellent. Councilmember Reynolds.
First, thanks everybody for the birthday wishes. You're right, this is not where I'd necessarily choose to be, but duty calls. Couple of quick things. One, the Parks and Recreation Commission and the Open Space Conservancy Trust are continuing to meet on the park zone, and they made some good progress 2 weeks ago now. They'll be meeting again this Thursday. I'm very impressed with that operation. Secondly, I'll just mention that on Sunday, I visited the community center to meet with Sari Weiss. I may be mispronouncing her name, I apologize if so, who's leading a program called Friendship Circle that meets at the community center for every month or so. Apparently the program's been going for decades, and I didn't know it, but I was very impressed with this program. It pairs up special education youth and young adults with local high school students who partner up to just provide, for lack of a better word, a friend, another contact to spend part of the afternoon with them. Huge participation, very impressive program. She said she's extended an invitation to the rest of the council to attend, and I just wanted to put a shout out and encourage you to make time to attend that if you can. I thought it was a very impressive program, and they could use our support. And at some point, we should probably have some discussions about what more the city might be able to do to partner and support this very important and very effective program.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderl.
Nothing to report except for happy birthday, Craig.
All right, close this out. Councilmember Jacobson.
Craig reported on the joint meeting of the Parks and Rec Commission and Open Space Committee, and we meet again Thursday and then possibly again in May if we can't get finished next week. The other thing I was involved in along with Alana was the King County Metro Solid Waste Advisory Committee, which Mercer Island joined, and that's an additional duty for being on the utility board, I guess. And so, Alana is engaged in that, and I think she will probably have some good interface with what they're doing in terms of our climate action plan. So, and I'd also like to say that we now have 2 council people who are officially senior citizens, so welcome aboard, Greg.
Where's the line until you cross to senior citizen?
It's just down there. All right. The next hybrid meeting of the City Council is scheduled for Tuesday, May 7th, 2024 at 5 p.m. The time is now 8:21 p.m. The City Council will go into executive session for approximately 60 minutes to discuss discuss with legal counsel pending or potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.110(1I). No action will be taken following the executive session. As a reminder to council, please stay seated until city staff has terminated the broadcast. Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight.